I invite you to keep your hearts open, knowing the love that is in this space that we have just expanded on through meditation, through holding each other in prayer and remembering each journey of healing that is happening in this congregation. I want you to remember your heart and your solar plexus, the divine powers of love and wisdom as we have this conversation today. You know, we've done a lot of talking over the past months about moving through the wilderness. Moses following divine guidance. Moses had wonderful visual guidance. A pillar of cloud in the daytime and a pillar of fire at night. Wow, wouldn't it be nice if it was that obvious? We've heard from Reverend Darlene Strickland saying, let go of the past. That was then, this is now. What is now? What will it be? We'll create it together. We heard from Max saying, think big, think success, set your vision for the best. It's like going for that pot of gold. Setting the vision for the pot of gold. What is the pot of gold in your life, in our corporate life as an organization? The thing is, that pot of gold you need to get there somehow. And the way I see it, rainbows are pretty elusive. When you get to the rainbow, you're probably not even aware that you're there because it's just vapor. So how do you navigate a rainbow to get to your pot of gold? How did Moses figure out how to get to the promised land? Wandering through a wilderness like a labyrinth. How did Abraham follow God's calling to get up and move to this promised land when he and his wife were in their 70s, being promised that they'll have as many children as the grains of sand or the stars in the sky? How did they find their way to these promises? That's why I've asked you to stay in your heart and in your wisdom chakra. How do we navigate the rainbow to that pot of gold? We're told, have a vision. Know where you're going. Know where you want to go. But don't hold on to it. Don't be attached. So you want to have a spouse, partner, new boyfriend, girlfriend. You make a list of all the qualities you want. But don't get too specific. So it's like you know you want a new career. But you don't get too specific, this or something better. It's more like holding on to the feeling that new career will bring, or the feeling that that partner in your life will bring. Holding on to the sense of completion or the sense of peace. This feels right, rather than getting stuck on whether he's 5'9" or 6'2". What does that partner feel like when he's with me? That's the vision. And so we hold the vision, but we have to balance it. The other side of it is the letting go. The juxtaposition of those two is the challenge we have spiritually. Hold the vision. You know, in Proverbs, I think it's on the next slide, 29, verse 18. First part, you know well. A house without a vision shall perish. But the second part is really important. Yes, if we have no vision, we will perish. And a house is like the consciousness that has no vision. If you have no vision, you have no direction. You have no hope to look forward to. But the second part says, blessed are those who keep the law and seek it with their heart. Remember the law. The law, as Jesus summarized it, is to love God and your neighbor as yourself. The first law, even in the 10 Commandments, was, I am the Lord your God. Put me first. That's the law. How can we put God first? As we just did in meditation when I invited you to let go of all the stuff up here and drop into the powers of wisdom and love. And to seek first that realm of God. So when we hold a vision, we might do it with our heads, our human will. This is what I want. I'm not going to stop until I get it. But if we hold a vision with God first, it's like changes the whole thing. It allows us to step aside and say, okay, I'm moving toward this. It represents peace, contentment, satisfaction, prosperity. But I know God is leading me like the pillar of fire through the darkness. And I will seek first that realm of God. What does it mean to seek the realm of God? We define God as love, as the infinite source of intelligence and wisdom. So that's what we're seeking when we seek God. We're seeking that centeredness, that oneness, that knowingness that we are one with that divine intelligence. Sometimes that rainbow that we're navigating to get there can be a little slippery, or it can seem to disappear, or we could take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or there could be a complete detour. Rainbows pretty much go a straight line, but metaphorically, detours happen in our journeys to satisfaction and fulfillment. And you know what? That pot of gold changes too, doesn't it? Or the pot of gold remains the same in terms of how it will help us feel, but it might look real different. It might be a pot of silver or emeralds. And then, once we get to it, there's another rainbow and another pot of gold. It never stops if we stay alive. There was a time in my life when I thought I had no pot of gold. I didn't know what. The pot of gold that I thought I was satisfied with no longer satisfied me. I felt I was born to be a school teacher, and I loved it. I loved the children. I loved playing with them, teaching them, stretching their minds. But then it crept up on me, that divine discontent. And I struggled against it because that career meant security, a good paycheck. North Carolina teachers, I don't know, that's all relative. But at least there was security. It was a regular paycheck, and there was health benefits, and a job to go to, and a community that I knew, and children who loved me, and parents who respected me. And here I am, here in this little, you don't really want to do this anymore. Wow. Talk about learning about attachments. Grabbing onto that for another year, and then another, saying, I can't leave it. It's my security. And then learning that my emotions were telling me to let go of it because I was getting less and less satisfied. Not because of the children, they were always beautiful. But when I started to realize, oh no, another school year's coming, and I've got the same age group, and they're going to start out just as immature as the last years did in September, and I realized my patience was leaving me, and the spark was going. Holding on to that was the clinging that I had to recognize, the attachment, and I had to let go of that. And I did, because the principal said, I'm not going to rehire you next year. He saw what I was refusing to see, that I wasn't content. But I could have looked at another job in another school district. There was plenty of them. And I had no desire. Didn't put out an application. Did not know what I was going to do next. I got a temp job at UNC, working in an office for half the pay. And I thought, whoa, this isn't good. But you know what it afforded me? It afforded me nights of no lesson plans, and no papers to grade, and no creative bulletin boards to plan. It afforded me nights of no teacher-parent meetings. And what I did instead is I dove into Unity SEE classes online and at the Village. SEE stands for Spiritual Education and Enrichment. They're available to everyone, all of you, online, at your own pace. Learn what Unity teaches. Well, I gobbled it up. I could not get enough. In that one summer, I spent 2 weeks at Unity Village, soaking it up, meeting the people, meeting one of my most significant mentors, Paul Hasselbeck. And I realize, in hindsight, that the loss of that prestigious, honorable career gave me the room to expand my spiritual basis and my intellectual understandings. When I was at the Village one time and in Paul's class, Paul Hasselbeck is the dean of the SEE program, and these courses are foundational for becoming a minister, but I wasn't thinking about that at all. I said to him, what do you do when you don't know what to do next? And he said, spend more time in the silence. And I thought, he doesn't know how much time I do spend in the silence. And 4 was that ego. And then I realized it doesn't matter. If I don't know what to do next, the answer is spend more time in the silence. And maybe the silence can be refined. Maybe I can figure out how to be more silent, more empty of my mind, more empty of the, oh, what am I going to do next? And more centered in the wisdom and the love, the depth of my being. And he was right. He was right, much to my, what's that word? Much chagrin. I talked to him about that years later, and he just smiled. He just smiled. He said, I had to learn that too. He said, if you don't know what to do, get a job at Starbucks and serve people coffee until you figure out what your calling is. Well, I was pushing papers around at UNC's dental school for a year, and then I took care of babies at Duke's child care center, which was rewarding, but certainly not what I knew I was called to do. Going to Unity Village was it, though, as I spent that time in the silence, walking the rose garden, enjoying the carillon of bells every hour. I heard. I couldn't believe it. I heard this voice say, someday you're going to live there. I was looking at a house on campus where students live who go to seminary. And that's what I heard. And do you know what? That very house and that very window that I was looking at is the one that I lived in for 3 years as I went to seminary. What a thrill. What a thrill to watch how divine guidance does its work. And we can always see it after the fact. We talked a lot about that in the class of Finding Yourself in Transition, how one crisis can open up to something amazing. Another example happened just recently, in the past few months. So everything's going okay in my life, or so it seemed, until I tuned in to my emotional guidance system and realized I wasn't up here in joy and elation. I was somewhere down here. If you're an Abraham Hicks student, you know I'm using that model as I talk. Joy is at the top, despair is at the bottom. I was somewhere in that in between, certainly not content. And I brought it into prayer, into journaling, into meditation. I brought it into the silence and said, what's going on here? Like I was, my I am was talking to my little me and said, what's wrong, dear one? What's wrong? And as I listened, a surprising thought came, just like as I stood on the village grounds and said that surprising thought came. This one was even more surprising. This surprising thought was, it's time for you to move on from Unity Center of Mills River. Wow. I said, no, we just got to figure out another solution. Sure, there's unfinished business here, and it's time for me to finish it. Sure, there's challenges, but I'm intelligent, and I've got a great team of board and other friends here. We can work this out. And I argued with myself, and I sought counsel, and the answer continued. It's time for you to let this go. You've done your work. And I know that if it's time for me to move on, then it's time for you to move forward too. I do not know where I'm going, just like in the last time. And I'm not going quickly. I brought this to the board. Every one of the board members listened with their hearts. And we've processed it for 2 months now. And I am guiding them to find a right and perfect minister that is equipped to help a church through transition, a short-term minister. And I'm staying with this church for 2.5 more months. I'm not packing up and leaving right away. May 31st is when it felt like the right time to say goodbye. I want you to know that it's not because of you. Each one of you is very dear to me. I look at you now, and there's only a few brand new visitors, and so many of you have been here, and I see you here because you love what I've brought. One person said, a breath of fresh air. The unity teachings. My authenticity has been valued by many of you, and that's why I've chosen to speak to you now as I asked you to keep your hearts open to hear this, because I don't want anybody to misunderstand. It is not about you. It is not about the work of being a spiritual leader. I've loved our classes and our amazing conversations in those small circles. I've loved the opportunity to teach you on Sunday mornings and lead meditations. I've loved the counseling and the one-on-one contact. I've loved singing with you and praying with you and working with the board to understand who are we, what's next. I've loved visiting some of you at hospital bedsides and praying with you in that way. It's not about you. You're a wonderful group of people. Well, then what is it about, you might be asking? Well, it's about feeling that I came here 2 years ago to serve a purpose that I had no heavenly idea what that purpose would be, and neither did you. None of us knew what we could expect when I came in. None of us expected what did unfold. And I was able to be the pastor during a crucial time of Chad's sickness and death. I was able to work with you over and over again about the spiritual practice of transition and letting go. I feel that I've guided you as an interim minister, given you idea that there is life after Chad. There's other great speakers that you can learn from. And I want you to know that there are other great speakers, pastors, spiritual leaders besides me. There are some fantastic people in the Unity movement who are trained to help a church through a transition such as this, and who will be able to inspire you and lead you. So I'm working with the board to find the right and perfect person who is trained to do that, to hold the fort, to inspire you, to help you sort things out and say, who are we now that that 30-year era is complete? What are we going to be? How are we going to show up in this community? So I want you to know big time that I'm not going anywhere until May 31st. I'm speaking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more times, maybe 8, through Easter and all through May. And I am excited to teach you some of the metaphysical Bible translation that I love so much, and we'll have fun with that and some other things. And I will continue to work with the board. We will find people who will continue to speak to you in June, July, or however long we need until a transitional minister is located. So I know this is a tough one. I see eyes being wiped, and it has been tough for me. Boy, have I struggled. But again, what it is when we seek divine guidance, we'll struggle like Jacob wrestling with the angel until we feel the blessing. And we'll struggle until a blessing comes. What does a blessing feel like? It's like that weight is up off your shoulders. It's like, peace. I'm not struggling anymore. When I finally stopped arguing with that still small voice that said it's time for you to move on, I felt peace. And guess what? I don't know what's next. I don't have another job to go to, just like 10 years ago. But I know from that experience that something wonderful is going to happen. And I know from that experience that something wonderful is going to happen here. I am going to create a vacuum. It's going to be filled. You hold the vision that which fills it is for your highest and best. And in hindsight, 5 years from now, or 10 or 2 years from now, you're going to say, as painful as it was, Pat's exit was the best thing that could happen for us as a spiritual community. That's hard to imagine because we're having a good time right now. But there's always something better or different or higher for us. I trust that. I found the quote that I mentioned the other day, 2 weeks ago, 3. Richard Bach said it. When you've come to the edge of the light that you have and step into the darkness of the unknown, believe that one of these two things will happen to you. Either you'll find something solid to stand on, or you'll be taught how to fly. So I believe that you and I will be taught how to fly, or we'll step onto something really solid, and then the next step, one step at a time to navigate to that vision, that pot of gold. I'm grateful to each one of you, and I continue to enjoy knowing that I'll have 2.5 more months to celebrate life and spiritual expansion with you. Thank you, dear ones. Namaste.